Steel bars, concrete walls, razor wire stretching higher than any man can climb. A place built to hold the worst of the worst men, society swears it has locked away forever. Yet inside these walls, hidden behind locked doors and surveillance cameras, power doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it grows. In the late 1990s, Los Angeles believed it had neutralized a menace when Frank "Puppet" Martinez was locked in a federal cell. Convicted, sentenced, sealed off from the world. On paper, his life was over, but out on the streets, his name carried more weight than ever. From MacArthur Park to the edges of Central America, his orders were law. Drug dealers, street vendors, entire neighborhoods lived under his rules, and every dollar of their survival tax flowed back to a man who hadn't seen freedom in years. This is not a story about one gangster. It's about how the system itself allowed prison to become a throne, how coded words, loyal messengers, and corrupt professionals turned concrete cages into command centers. Tonight, we're walking into the world where prison isn't punishment, it's promotion, and where a single voice, muffled by steel doors, could still decide who lived and who died. Prison walls can't stop power. Prisons are supposed to be the end of the story. A man is convicted, sentenced, locked away, and forgotten. But for gangs, prison often works in the opposite way. Behind steel bars and concrete walls, leaders are not weakened. They're elevated. Their voices carry even more weight because everyone knows they're already paying the price of loyalty, a life behind bars. Frank "Puppet" Martinez is the perfect example of this paradox. By the late 1990s, the government believed it had silenced him with life sentences in federal prison. On paper, he was done. In reality, his control only expanded. From inside a tiny cell, he ran drug deals, collected extortion money, and ordered murders. Prison guards, cameras, and locked doors could not contain his influence. Through coded conversations, trusted messengers, and corrupt insiders, Martinez proved that walls were meaningless when fear and loyalty stretched beyond them. This is what makes gangs so dangerous. The leader doesn't need freedom to rule. He only needs loyalty and fear, and those can survive anywhere. Martinez turned his cell into a command center, and his orders shaped entire neighborhoods. The world thought he was finished. He was only getting started. The rise of Puppet Martinez. Frank Martinez wasn't just another gangster on the block. He was different. Born into the world of Los Angeles gangs, he quickly climbed the ranks of the 18th Street Gang, one of the largest and most violent gangs in the United States. But he didn't stop there. He became a member of the Mexican Mafia, known as LAM, the prison-based organization that controlled nearly every Southern California gang. This double power gave him reach and respect. On the streets, he ran his own clique. Behind bars, he had the backing of the Mexican Mafia. That meant he wasn't just controlling a corner or a few streets. He was overseeing entire neighborhoods and influencing gang activity across cities. For members of the Colombia Lil Psychos clique, Martinez was more than a leader. He was the shot caller, the man who had the final word on everything, who sold drugs, who paid taxes, who lived, who died. All of it came back to Puppet. His name carried fear. His reputation gave him authority. And his membership in LAM made him nearly untouchable. Puppet Martinez wasn't just powerful, he was legendary. The Colombia Lil Psychos clique. Every empire needs territory. For Martinez, that was MacArthur Park and the surrounding Westlake neighborhood in Los Angeles. At first glance, the area looked ordinary. Street vendors, families, small shops, and a busy crowd. But beneath the surface, It was a gold mine. The dense streets made it easy to hide drug sales, and the hundreds of vendors were the perfect targets for weekly taxes. This is where the Colombia Lil Psychos, or CLCS, thrived. They were Martinez's soldiers, enforcing his rules and collecting money for him. A food vendor selling tacos, $50 a week. A flower stand, another $50. A DVD seller, pay up. It might not sound like much, but when multiplied across hundreds of vendors, it became tens of thousands of dollars every single week. And it wasn't just vendors. Drug dealers paid a percentage of their sales, usually 10 to 30%. That was money off the top, before paying anyone else. These taxes were not optional. If someone refused, the CLCS had a message waiting: pay or face the Toros, the enforcers who made examples out of people. MacArthur Park was no longer just a neighborhood. It was a cash machine, one that Puppet Martinez controlled from prison. Prison as promotion. In most people's minds, prison is punishment. It's where criminals go to lose power, freedom, and influence. But in gang culture, prison often works the opposite way. Going behind bars can actually raise someone's status. Why? Because surviving prison is a badge of honor. Serving time proves loyalty. And once you're inside, you're surrounded by the real power, the shot callers of the Mexican Mafia. For someone like Frank Martinez, prison wasn't the end of his career. It was a promotion. On the outside, rivals can target you. Police can track you. Life is unpredictable. But inside prison, Martinez became untouchable. Nobody could shoot him, and nobody could betray him without facing the wrath of La M. For Puppet Martinez, life sentences didn't close his chapter. They turned him into a mythic figure, a leader whose voice carried from his cell straight into the heart of Los Angeles. Running an empire requires communication. Martinez couldn't make phone calls freely. They were recorded. He couldn't send letters without them being read. But he had something more powerful: his wife, Janie Garcia. On the streets, people called her La Señora, the lady. Every week, Janie visited Martinez in prison. She sat across from him under cameras and guards, but somehow she always left with more than just a smile or a hug. Martinez had mastered coded conversations. Talking about new tenants meant new dealers. Cleaning up meant eliminating rivals. A person sick meant they were marked for death. Janie memorized every word, every name, every instruction. She became the bridge between the prison and the pavement. When she returned to Los Angeles, she relayed the orders to CLCS leaders: vendors to tax, soldiers to promote, rivals to kill. To the outside world, she looked like a devoted wife visiting her husband. To the streets, she was the voice of Puppet Martinez. Without La Señora, the empire might have collapsed. With her, it thrived. She proved that one woman carrying messages in her head could keep a criminal empire alive. The lawyer who crossed the line. If Janie Garcia was Martinez's voice, attorney Isaac Guillen was his shield. On paper, Guillen was a respected lawyer with a clean record. In reality, he was one of the most dangerous tools Martinez ever had. Here's why: attorney-client privilege. It's one of the strongest protections in American law. When a lawyer meets with a client in prison, no one can record or monitor the conversation. It's meant to protect justice. They discuss drug shipments, assassination lists, and extortion targets. He took notes like any lawyer, but those notes were messages disguised as legal work. Even worse, Guillen became Martinez's banker. He laundered over $1.3 million in drug money through his accounts. He paid soldiers, supported families, and kept the empire running smoothly. The FBI later discovered he made over 60 prison visits, each one carrying money, names, or deadly instructions. For Martinez, Guillen was the perfect partner, a man whose law degree gave him cover and whose betrayal of the system gave Puppet unstoppable power. The business of fear, the CLCS, wasn't just about drugs and gangs. It was a business built on fear. Every vendor, every dealer, every small business in MacArthur Park knew the rules. You paid the tax or you faced consequences. Collectors came around like clockwork. Sometimes they were young recruits, eager to prove themselves. Sometimes veteranos, hardened men who made examples out of those who resisted. Either way, the message was the same: pay or pay the price. The taxes added up quickly. A flower vendor might pay $50. A DVD seller, another $50. Dealers lost 10 to 30% of their gross sales. Before paying for drugs, before paying their own people, the gang's cut came first. It was organized like a corporation, but enforced like a cartel. What made it work was fear. Fear of violence, fear of retaliation, fear of being the next example. This fear kept the system running smoothly, week after week, making Puppet Martinez rich from behind bars. In 2007, a street vendor named Francisco Clemente refused to pay his weekly $50 tax. In gang culture, no is not an answer. It's disrespect. It's a threat to the entire structure. If one vendor refuses, others might follow. Giovanni Mito, a young soldier, was sent to handle it, but he made a reckless mistake. He attacked Clemente in broad daylight while the man was with his family, including his 23-day-old baby boy, Luis Angel Garcia. The bullets meant for Clemente struck the infant, killing him instantly. The death of a baby shook the city. News headlines exploded. The community was outraged. Even the Mexican Mafia was furious. Children were off limits. Killing a baby wasn't just tragic, it was bad for business. Suddenly, Martinez's empire was under fire from all sides. The community, law enforcement, and even his own organization. A $50 tax had led to a tragedy that threatened to destroy everything, and Martinez needed to act fast to protect his power, turning soldiers into witnesses. When the baby's murder brought unwanted attention, Martinez moved to clean house. His soldier Mito, who pulled the trigger, was marked for death. Another longtime member, Juan Termite Romero, soon found himself on the same list. Martinez sent word: fumigate them. In his code, that meant kill them. Soldiers spread the orders, and hit teams moved in. Mito was lured to Mexico, beaten, and thrown off a cliff. Somehow, he survived. Termite was cornered and shot multiple times, but he too lived. Both men faced a choice: stay loyal and die, or flip and live. They chose survival. Mito and Termite became government witnesses. They told the FBI everything: the codes, the money, the murders, the names. For the first time, the feds had inside men who could decode Martinez's empire from the ground up. Their betrayal shattered CLCS. Soldiers feared talking on phones. Leaders worried about trust. And Martinez's once perfect system started to collapse under the weight of paranoia. For law enforcement, it was a golden break. For the gang, it was the beginning of the end. The fall of the empire. By 2009, the FBI had built its case. Years of surveillance, wiretaps, financial records, and witness testimony all pointed back to Frank Martinez and the CLCS. The hammer finally dropped. 43 members of the clique were indicted under federal RICO charges: racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, drug trafficking, and murder. The indictment was brutal, outlining every crime from weekly vendor taxes to the killing of baby Luis Angel Garcia. The courtroom trials sealed their fate. 37 members were convicted. Many received life sentences with no chance of parole. Others pleaded guilty, hoping for lighter time. The evidence was too overwhelming to fight. For Martinez, already serving life, the indictments didn't change his personal fate. But for his empire, it was devastating. Leaders, soldiers, and even his corrupt lawyer, Isaac Guillen, went down. Guillen lost his law license, was disbarred, and sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. The FBI celebrated. Years of work had paid off. The headlines declared victory, but in reality, it was only one battle in a much bigger war. The cycle that never ends. After the convictions, MacArthur Park changed, but only for a moment. Puppet Martinez's carefully built system was shattered, but it didn't disappear. Young gang members fought for the open space, eager to replace the fallen leaders. The CLCS adapted. They used burner phones, new codes, and stricter rules. They learned from Martinez's mistakes, like never targeting children and never trusting anyone who'd been arrested. Law enforcement improved too, adding faster monitoring systems and even artificial intelligence to detect coded language. But gangs evolved just as quickly, turning to encrypted apps and creative communication methods. And the deeper problem never went away. Poverty, lack of opportunity, broken families, and failing schools. These were the roots of gang culture, and they still fueled new generations of soldiers. Martinez may sit in a maximum security cell today, locked away forever, but his story proves one thing. You can't end a gang by locking up its leader. Another always takes his place. The cycle continues, and the cost is always the same. Communities trapped in fear, families destroyed, and lives cut short. The empire of Puppet Martinez may have fallen, but the world that created him is still alive. Thank you for watching. Today, we explored how Frank Puppet Martinez turned a prison cell into a command center, how fear and loyalty kept an empire alive, and how tragedy and betrayal finally brought it down. His story shows us that prison walls don't always end violence. Sometimes they strengthen it. If you found this helpful, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more valuable insights into crime, power, and the hidden systems that shape our world. Stay curious, because the next story might change how you see everything.